Peak Clover. Goat Clover. Tabata has blessed us with yet another top-tier chapter. Black Clover Chapter 365, titled 500 Years of Isolation, opens up with a bloodied and exhausted Nero. She would think to herself that her sealing magic is able to seal all the damage and pain they have received up until now. But at this point, that will all come undone if she herself is damaged any further. The might of their paladin opponent was simply too great, but even still, they tried their best to stall until Asta's arrival. But right now, with Gray and Gauche bleeding out, to the point where sealing the damage wasn't even enough for them to get back on their feet, things were not looking good at all. But from there, the moment so many of us have been waiting for would finally come to fruition. I told you it was only a matter of time, and here we are. Charmy rises to the occasion. As the wolf emerged from sheep's clothing, the mage of increasing size would wonder what her opponent was doing. Magical glyphs littered the scene as Charmy's wolf towered against the invading Celestials. Noct, Magna, and Luck charged into battle once more. Magna called out to Nero from over his shoulder and told her to let Gordon and Henry go. The three watched on in astonishment as their friends took the lead. As the Guardian Angels unleashed their concentrated beams of mixed magical attributes, Charmy's wolf devoured the outpour of power. Now supercharged, she pulverized the constructs with the magical strength that had collected around her fists. This was an assault that even Kira needed to be weary of. The shadows beneath her then began to move. Springing forth was the power of Noct to back her up. As the hellish canine maws clamped down on their angelic victims, the trio looked like a three-headed Cerberus. From there, the Black Bulls continued their assault. They all set their sights on Kira, and Charmy even began to unload a series of punches onto them. This is what it took to push Kira to the next phase. He had acknowledged the enemies in front of him. If nothing else, they were actually succeeding in buying Asta more time. Having his hand forced, Kira accepted the circumstances and adapted accordingly. In the very next moment, Charmy's entire body had been cut into as her blood trailed in all directions. Her friends cried out as she fell back and her wolf began to disappear. And even though this is the end of Charmy in this fight, I am plenty satisfied with how things played out. She got to look like a badass and played the role of a secret weapon very well. I'm still waiting on more of her secrets to be revealed, but since they haven't just yet, that just tells me that this isn't the last epic moment that we'll see from her, which is honestly even better. At the end of the day, the objective of the Black Bulls is not to win, but to stall. And she definitely pushed the envelope on that front. Again, it's really incredible how powerful these Black Bulls are, despite the impact of Kira's scale magic. Of course, Gordon and Henry are doing their best to reduce its effects, but it hasn't been totally nullified. This paladin has an unreal amount of mana, so draining it is a process that is bound to take a very long time. And that's time they just don't have available right now. As Zora desperately raced towards him, the original paladin proclaimed that his glorious master Lucius had given some of his people a second magical attribute. Zora's body suffered the same unfortunate fate as Charmy's. Kira admitted that the power of the Supreme Devil Ball was purified and given to him. This is yet another reveal that we have been waiting to see. His second attribute was atmosphere magic, an invisible power that would prove to be the judgment against them all. Atmosphere magic is presumably the strongest version of wind magic that we have ever seen. In theory, it might be that as opposed to being a manipulation of a sort of planetary atmosphere, this magic refers to the layers of air surrounding its user. There are several layers to Earth's atmosphere, all of which span several miles. It's possible that the closer one is to the source of its power, the more imposing and devastating the force of it may be. And beyond that, the range is likely to be immense. So incredible range, lethal in close quarters, effective as an offensive tool, and capable as a defensive one too. This is a pretty awesome sort of magic. Black Clover never disappoints when it comes to making cool powers. In fact, without moving at all, the Paladin was able to completely dismiss the shadowy hounds of Vice Captain Noct simultaneously. But even that was not enough to make the Black Bulls back down. After losing the giant bull in the previous chapter, Henry and Gordon took to the skies and rocketed their way towards the enemy. Nero's eyes went wide with concern. She recalled her history. For 500 long years, she had abandoned her humanity thanks to forbidden magic. Her one and only reason for living was for the fulfillment of her mission. It was a long enough time for her to lose herself, her attachments, and her emotions. Had she remained a human throughout this ordeal instead of as a bird, she knows that she would have never been able to make it. But at the time, so long as it meant she would be able to complete her mission, she didn't really care if it killed her. Without the first Wizard King, she felt as though she had no lingering attachments to the world. But during the Elf Invasion arc, she was able to reunite with him. Learning of her half a millennia-long dedication, the young king graciously thanked her for all that she had done. But before departing, he told her that from now on, she should live in pursuit of newfound happiness for herself with friends in the current era. And that's exactly what the Black Bulls have been to her, precious and irreplaceable friends. And right now, those very friends were being mercilessly slaughtered. Luck began to spew blood from his mouth. He had been directly pierced through the torso by Kira's holy blade. Nero wanted nothing more than for the mayhem to stop. Luck flung Magna forward, and Magna unleashed a ball of fire towards the Holy Fiend. He tried to connect with his Soul Chain deathmatch, which would have been insane, but was repelled by the Paladin's sword and torn asunder like the others thanks to atmosphere magic. And that's the thing about something as imposing as Soul Chain Deathmatch, and something I kind of feared about it. It's such an epic thing that to use it as is all over again, although cool, would not be able to live up to the first time. It's lost its novelty in a way. So for it to be used again, I'm expecting it to need some sort of power-up or new conditions. Otherwise, I just can't see it happening in such a big way ever again. And this isn't in regards to my own personal enjoyment, it's more or less just the thematics of the writing. Nero continued to think of her friends, the ones who had saved her from such a sorry existence. From there, Kira made his move, racing in the direction of Henry and Gordon, who were launching attacks of their own. Their vessel was easily torn apart. Before long, the side of the massive tree had been crashed into, much to the dismay of every witch in attendance. The three young mages went careening through the space. Then, history's three greatest witches, Vanessa, Dorothy, and the Witch Queen, all attempted to interrupt, but it was no use. They were all sent back as bloody heaps in front of the portal. And although I'm sure it makes total sense, seeing the Witch Queen get tossed aside like this is still really crazy to me. It's been a long time since we've had her as an antagonist, but man was she capable back then. Nero struggled to lift her body. Despite all their valiant efforts, there wasn't a single scratch on the enemy. His huge scales remained perfectly balanced. As the despair continued to set in, Nero thought to herself how all of this was one person's fault. This person was the reason she was alive, the reason she had friends now, the reason she got her heart back. Thinking of Asta, she just wanted him to come back already. She screamed his name at the top of her lungs with nothing but heartfelt emotion behind it. She could not keep going on without him. But now, the Paladin was certain that this time would truly be their end. But he could not be more wrong. Because finally, after weeks and weeks and weeks, Asta has finally returned. Emerging from the ancient portal behind them, he placed his hand on Nero's head while keeping his eyes trained on the enemy. Nero's eyes widened with awe. They had done it. Asta was back, and right now, his presence reminded her of the first Wizard Kings. The flaw of the world and Lucius's worst nightmare began walking towards his opponent. He expressed his gratitude towards everyone for making this happen. It is finally time, and no break next week, so we won't have to wait too long for more. Now, the question is, how long will this battle take Asta? Leave your predictions down below. Will he one-shot this guy, or will it be a full fight chapter? And regardless of what's most likely, what would you personally like to see? At this point, the only shonen main character with more girls in love with him would have to be Luffy. And that man's had more than triple the amount of chapters to make that happen. Shout out to the short king Asta, man. As always, I'm Sliceable Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.